Lewis Hamilton didn't just win races in Formula One, he changed how races are controlled. And not with raw speed, not with aggressive overtakes, not even with qualifying dominance. He changed it with something most fans barely notice: tyre management. But here's the first question you need to think about. If every driver has access to the same Pirelli compounds, if every team sees the same degradation curves, if every engineer understands temperature windows, why has almost nobody been able to replicate Lewis Hamilton's long stint dominance over the last decade? Is it just smooth driving? Or is there something far more technical happening beneath the surface? And here's the second question, one we'll answer later in this video. Did Hamilton master tyre management because the hybrid era suited him, or did the hybrid era reward the exact skill set he had already developed? Because if it's the second one, then what he changed wasn't just a style, it was the competitive blueprint of modern Formula One. Stay with me, because once we break down the braking data, the slip angle control, the torque modulation, and how tyre thermal cycles actually work, you'll understand why most drivers still can't copy what he does. And more importantly, whether 2026 could bring it back to the forefront again. Let's rewind to 2014, the beginning of the hybrid turbo era. Cars suddenly became heavier, over 690 kg at the time, now over 798 kg in recent seasons before 2026 weight reduction targets. Torque delivery changed dramatically. The 1.6 V6 turbo with ERS systems produced brutal low RPM torque thanks to the MGU-K and MGU-H integration. Rear tyres were under stress like never before. Pirelli compounds were intentionally designed with higher degradation to promote strategy variability. Thermal drop-off was sharp. If surface temperature exceeded the optimal working window, typically around 110 C depending on compound, grip would fall off quickly. Now here's the first technical layer most fans overlook. There are two types of tyre temperature: surface temperature and carcass temperature. Surface temperature reacts quickly. It spikes under sliding, lockups, or wheel spin. Carcass temperature builds gradually. It determines long-term performance stability. Most drivers manage surface temperature. Hamilton manages carcass temperature. That's the difference. When you brake aggressively and lock a front tire even slightly, you create a surface temperature spike. That spike transfers inward. If repeated across laps, carcass temperature rises beyond the stable window. Once that happens, degradation accelerates exponentially. Now go watch Hamilton's braking traces compared to many drivers. He doesn't spike brake pressure instantly. His brake ramp is progressive. He builds pressure smoothly, reaches peak deceleration, then releases in a controlled trail. This reduces front tire shock. It sounds minor. But multiply that by 50 braking events over a race distance. That's cumulative thermal control. Now here's the third question, and we'll answer it later. If Hamilton's advantage is so technical and measurable, why can't teams just train drivers to copy his inputs? Why isn't everyone doing it? Hold that thought. Let's go deeper. Mid-corner is where most degradation damage actually occurs. Modern F1 cars generate enormous lateral load, over 4G in high-speed corners. That lateral load creates slip angle. Tires produce peak grip at specific slip angles, typically between 3 and 7 depending on compound and load. Exceed that window and you generate excess friction heat. Hamilton is extremely precise at staying within optimal slip range. Watch onboard footage carefully. His steering inputs are fluid, rarely abrupt, rarely corrective. Many aggressive drivers generate extra rotation by exceeding optimal slip briefly. That can help short-term rotation but increases surface wear. Hamilton minimizes those micro overslip events. Now combine that with throttle modulation. Hybrid-era torque delivery is immediate. The MGU-K can deploy up to a 120 kW of electrical power, roughly 160 instantly. That torque spike under exit can easily overheat rear tires. Hamilton feeds throttle progressively. Not slowly, progressively. There's a difference. He matches torque application to grip evolution. If grip is building, throttle builds. If grip is marginal, throttle pauses momentarily. It's almost subconscious. That's why copying it isn't easy, because it requires instinctual synchronization between brain and rear axle. Now let's answer the first big question. Why can't everyone replicate it? Because tire management isn't about being slow early, it's about controlled aggression timing. Hamilton doesn't always conserve, he chooses when to conserve. Take long stint races like Turkey 2020. Extreme track conditions, cold surface, low grip, high degradation. Hamilton extended stints while others burned through intermediates quickly. Why? Because he adapted steering input to available grip immediately. Others tried to drive the racing line normally, he drove the grip evolution curve. That's high-level adaptability. And this brings us to the next curiosity question. Did Hamilton's tyre mastery give Mercedes strategic dominance, or did Mercedes' dominance allow Hamilton to showcase tyre mastery? This matters, because critics argue Mercedes' car superiority masked driver differences. But look at races where Mercedes wasn't dominant. Silverstone 2020, multiple late punctures across the field. Hamilton nursed heavily worn tyres and finished on 3 wheels. Brazil 2021. Intense stint pressure and strategic flexibility. Bahrain multiple seasons, severe rear degradation. In high degradation environments, his long-run consistency repeatedly stood out. Now here's something rarely discussed. Tyre degradation is not linear. It's exponential after threshold breach. If you overheat tyres early by just a small margin, the drop-off later is dramatic. Hamilton's early stint restraint prevents exponential collapse. Most drivers drive at 100% early, then drop to 95%, then 92%, then 88%. Hamilton may start at 98% but stays at 97% consistently. Over 30 laps, that wins. Now, let's connect this to energy deployment. In the hybrid era, energy harvesting under braking affects rear stability. Heavy rear harvesting can destabilize the rear axle. Hamilton balances harvesting aggression with stability needs. He doesn't just chase maximum energy recovery if it compromises tyre health. This integrated approach is why copying him requires full system coordination: braking maps, diff settings, throttle maps, deployment modes. It's not just drive smoother, it's align the entire car setup with thermal stability philosophy. And most drivers are trained to maximize lap time, not thermal curve optimization. Now let's answer the second big question. Did the hybrid era suit him, or did he shape it? Lewis entered the hybrid era at peak maturity. By 2014, he already had years of experience managing Pirelli's high degradation compounds from 2011 onward. When torque increased, his smooth inputs became even more valuable. So it wasn't the era shaping him, it was his style being amplified by the era. But now comes 2026. And here's the next tension layer. 2026 regulations remove the MGU-H. Electrical power contribution increases dramatically. Cars are targeted to be lighter, around 30 kg lighter than current generation. Active aero changes load distribution. If cars become lighter and potentially less degradation prone, does Hamilton's advantage shrink? Or does increased electric torque make rear management even more critical? Electric torque is instantaneous. Without MGU smoothing turbo behavior, torque delivery characteristics change again. Throttle precision becomes even more vital. That sounds like a Hamilton strength. But here's the complication. As drivers age, reaction time and micro-adjustment speed can decline slightly. Tyre management relies on sensing grip drop-off early. Hamilton's experience gives him an internal database of degradation patterns. But younger drivers like Verstappen and Norris have also grown up in the high degradation Pirelli era. The margin isn't as dramatic as it was in 2014. So here's another curiosity hook for you. If 2026 reduces degradation overall through lighter cars and revised tyre construction, does that remove one of Hamilton's historic weapons entirely? Because if degradation becomes less severe, the gap between aggressive and conservative drivers narrows. That compresses long-run advantage. However, if energy management becomes more complex, balancing harvesting versus tyre temperature, then Hamilton's multivariable awareness could re-emerge as critical. Now let's zoom into specific technical metrics. Telemetry comparisons often show Hamilton's steering trace smoother in race trim than qualifying trim. Brake pressure variance lower per lap. Throttle oscillation frequency lower. Lower oscillation frequency equals lower microslip. Lower microslip equals lower heat spike. It's engineering discipline translated into muscle memory. Now think psychologically. Most drivers cannot resist pushing when under pressure. Hamilton can. That's the psychological edge. When rivals see him conserving, they push to escape. They overheat. He waits, then attacks. It's strategic patience, and patience under racing pressure is rare. So here's the final big question we've been building toward. Is Lewis Hamilton the greatest tyre manager in F1 history because of talent alone, or because he redefined how drivers approach race tempo entirely? Because if it's the second, then even after retirement, his blueprint remains embedded in modern F1 philosophy. Teams now emphasize long-run simulations heavily. Thermal modeling is more advanced than ever. Drivers talk about phase management mid-race. That language became mainstream during his dominant years. He normalized the idea that pace isn't just about speed, it's about sustainability. And sustainability wins championships. Now let me ask you something directly. If 2026 increases torque spikes and energy trade-offs, if lighter cars reduce degradation, if active aero changes corner balance, does Hamilton's tyre genius become less relevant? Or does it become the deciding factor again in a new era of complexity? Comment below. Is he the greatest tyre manager in F1 history? Or was he simply perfectly matched to the hybrid era? And if you enjoy deep technical breakdowns like this, where we go beyond headlines and analyze what actually changes under braking, under steering, under throttle, subscribe now. Because next, we're breaking down how 2026 electric deployment maps could create entirely new tyre degradation patterns, and which driver style benefits most. Tyre management isn't flashy, it doesn't make dramatic highlight reels, but it wins titles. And Lewis Hamilton didn't just master it, he changed how the sport understands it.